fifth-round quarterback just executed one of the most devastating business moves in NFL history, and almost everyone missed it completely. When Shedeur signed his rookie contract with the Cleveland Browns, the sports world shrugged. Another draft pick, another standard deal, another young player hoping to prove himself worthy of a starting job. The headlines were predictable. The analysis was surface level. Nobody bothered reading the fine print. That was a massive mistake. Buried deep within that contract was language so revolutionary that league executives are now holding emergency meetings trying to figure out how to respond. This wasn't a typo or legal oversight. This was a calculated strike against the NFL's entire business model, decades in the making. Forget touchdown passes and quarterback ratings for a moment. This story isn't really about football at all. This is about power. This is about billions of dollars the league has kept from players for generations. This is about one family deciding enough was enough. The clause is only a few paragraphs long, but its implications could permanently reshape how professional athletes get paid across every major sport. But to understand why this matters, you need to know what the NFL has been doing to players for decades. The National Football League generates more revenue than any sports organization on the planet. We're talking north of $18 billion annually. Television deals alone bring in billions. Merchandise sales add billions more. Sponsorships, licensing agreements, media rights, stadium revenue, the list never ends. Now here's the part they don't advertise. The players who generate that revenue, the ones fans actually pay to watch, receive only a fraction of what their popularity produces. And the system keeping it that way has been carefully designed over decades. Consider what happens when you buy an NFL jersey. Let's say you purchase a Patrick Mahomes jersey for $150. The NFL and its licensing partners capture the overwhelming majority of that money. Mahomes himself receives almost nothing beyond his contracted salary. His face moves the merchandise. His name drives the purchase. His highlights fuel the marketing campaigns. But the profits flow upward to the league, not outward to the player. The same principle applies to media content. Every time a spectacular catch goes viral on NFL social channels, advertising revenue pours in. The athlete who made that catch doesn't see a dime of it. The league owns those highlights. The league monetizes that content. The player's contribution ends the moment the camera stops rolling. This arrangement has existed since the NFL's earliest days, and it's been reinforced through every collective bargaining agreement. Players negotiate for salary increases and benefit improvements. Meanwhile, the league quietly maintains ironclad control over something far more valuable in the modern economy: identity, your name, your face, your image, your likeness. In the NFL's traditional structure, those belong to the league the moment you sign your contract. Sure, players can pursue certain endorsement deals with league approval. But the fundamental architecture of athlete monetization has always favored institutional control over individual ownership. Think about retired players for a moment. Legends who defined eras and filled stadiums for decades. Many of them struggle financially after their careers end. Meanwhile, the NFL continues selling their jerseys, licensing their highlights, and profiting from their legacies. The system was never designed to benefit athletes long-term. It was designed to extract maximum value while they're useful, then move on to the next generation. Some players have fought back over the years. Lawsuits over likeness rights have produced mixed results. Former athletes have demanded compensation for video game appearances and trading card images. Occasionally, they win small victories, but the overall power structure remains firmly intact. The league's standard argument goes something like this: we provide the platform, the exposure, the infrastructure that makes players famous. Without the NFL's marketing machine, individual athletes wouldn't have national recognition. Therefore, the league deserves to control and profit from that recognition. For decades, players accepted this logic because they had no alternative. The NFL held all the leverage. If you wanted to play professional football at the highest level, you accepted their terms. There was no negotiation, no pushback, no leverage to demand anything different. College athletes faced even worse conditions until recently. The NCAA maintained its amateur model for generations, preventing athletes from earning anything beyond scholarships, while universities generated billions from their performances. That system finally cracked in 2021 when nil rights, name, image and likeness, became legal for college athletes. Suddenly, college players could sign sponsorship deals, monetize social media, and control their own brands while still competing. The results were immediate and dramatic. Top prospects began earning millions before ever reaching professional leagues. The power dynamic shifted overnight, but here's what most people missed. That nil revolution in college sports wasn't just about immediate earnings. It was training an entire generation of athletes to think differently about their careers. They learned to view themselves as brands, as businesses, as entities separate from the institutions they played for. One family understood this shift better than anyone. They'd been preparing for it since before nil even became legal. They watched the NFL's exploitation model for 30 years and decided their son wouldn't become its next victim. And when draft day finally arrived, the Sanders family wasn't just ready to play football. They were ready to rewrite the rules entirely. Deion Sanders isn't just a football legend. He's a case study in athlete branding that business schools should be teaching. Most people remember prime time for his electrifying play, the high-stepping touchdowns, the shutdown cornerback skills, the baseball crossover, the undeniable charisma. What they forget is how deliberately he constructed his public persona and monetized his fame. During his playing career, Deion understood something most athletes of his era completely missed. The game would eventually end. The body would break down. The cheering would stop. But a properly built brand could generate income forever. He pursued media opportunities aggressively. He cultivated relationships with sponsors who valued personality over just athletic performance. He made himself impossible to ignore. After retirement, while many former players faded into obscurity and financial difficulty, Deion remained visible and relevant. Television analyst roles kept him in the public eye. Business ventures expanded his portfolio. He studied how the sports industry actually worked, not just the playing side, but the money side, the power side, the exploitation side. He watched as leagues continued profiting from retired players who received nothing in return. He saw young athletes sign away their rights without understanding what they were surrendering. He witnessed generations of talent generate billions for institutions while struggling to build lasting wealth themselves. When Deion eventually moved into coaching, first at Jackson State and then at Colorado, he brought this business philosophy with him. His program wasn't just about developing football players. It was about developing complete athletes who understood their value and knew how to protect it. The transfer portal became his weapon. He attracted talent by promising not just playing time and development, but education in personal branding and business strategy. Players who joined his program learned to think beyond their next game. They learned to think about their next career, their next venture, their legacy. Shedeur Sanders grew up watching all of this unfold. He absorbed lessons that most athletes don't learn until their careers are already over, if they learn them at all. From childhood, he understood that football was a platform, not a destination. The sport could open doors, but the doors themselves had value only if you knew how to walk through them strategically. At Colorado, Shedeur became more than a quarterback. He became a content creator with millions of followers. He became a social media personality whose audience rivaled established NFL stars. He became a brand before ever taking a professional snap, and crucially, he owned that brand completely. This wasn't accidental or lucky. This was systematic preparation. Every interview refined his public speaking skills. Every social media post built his audience. Every behind-the-scenes documentary humanized his journey and deepened fan connection. By his final college season, Shedeur Sanders had something most rookies desperately need but rarely possess: leverage. The typical NFL draft prospect enters negotiations from a position of weakness. They need the league more than the league needs them. Their earning potential depends entirely on getting drafted and making a roster. They'll sign whatever contract is placed in front of them because the alternative is unemployment. Shedeur's situation was fundamentally different. His audience existed independently of any NFL team. His brand generated revenue whether he played professional football or not. He could credibly threaten to pursue other ventures if terms weren't favorable. That leverage changed everything about his negotiation posture. Reports suggest the Sanders family began preparing contract language months before the draft even occurred. They consulted attorneys who specialized in intellectual property and athlete representation. They studied precedents from other sports where players had successfully retained brand control. They identified exactly which rights they refused to surrender under any circumstances. When Cleveland selected Shedeur in the 5th round, the team thought they were getting a developmental quarterback at a bargain price. What they actually got was a business entity prepared to operate within their organization while maintaining complete autonomy over its most valuable assets. So when draft day finally arrived, the Sanders family wasn't just ready to play football. They were ready to execute a strategy years in the making. The clause they inserted would send shockwaves through every front office in professional sports. Rookie contracts in the NFL follow a rigid formula. The collective bargaining agreement dictates compensation based on draft position. A first-round pick earns a predetermined amount. A 7th-round pick earns considerably less. There's minimal flexibility, minimal negotiation, minimal room for creativity. Every year, thousands of young players sign essentially identical agreements. Shedeur's base compensation followed this formula precisely. His signing bonus matched what every other 5th-round selection received. His yearly salary aligned with slotted expectations. On the surface, nothing appeared unusual. The numbers looked boring, predictable, completely standard. The revolution was hiding in the supplementary language. What's now being called the Prime Equity Clause established something unprecedented in NFL history. Shedeur retained 100% ownership of his name, image, and likeness rights. Not partial ownership, not shared ownership. Complete, unrestricted control over his personal brand and identity. But that was only the beginning. The clause also guaranteed Shedeur 20% of all revenue generated from brand-related activities. Every jersey sold bearing his name triggers a direct payment. Every piece of merchandise featuring his likeness produces a percentage. Every time monetized content uses his image, he receives compensation. This extends beyond physical products into digital territory. Social media content, highlight compilations, documentary appearances, sponsored integrations, all of it flows through Shedeur's ownership structure rather than the league's centralized system. Understanding why this matters requires understanding how NFL merchandise revenue typically works. The league operates through NFL Properties, a centralized licensing arm that controls all official merchandise. Teams and players participate in a revenue-sharing pool, but individual athletes receive minimal direct compensation regardless of their personal popularity. A superstar quarterback, whose jersey outsells every other player in the league, receives roughly the same merchandise compensation as a backup linebacker nobody recognizes. The system intentionally flattens individual value to benefit collective league interests. Shedeur's clause bypasses this structure entirely for his personal brand activities. He's not waiting for revenue-sharing distributions filtered through league bureaucracy. He's receiving direct payments based on actual sales his brand generates. The legal mechanism enabling this arrangement reportedly exploits a gap in current CBA language. While the agreement governs player salaries and team-related compensation, it's less explicit about individually negotiated likeness provisions that don't directly involve team activities. Shedeur technically isn't taking money from the Browns or circumventing salary cap rules. He's monetizing Shedeur Sanders the brand through channels separate from Shedeur Sanders the Cleveland Browns employee. The distinction is subtle but legally significant. Some legal experts believe this interpretation could face challenges. The NFL has broad authority to regulate player conduct and business activities. League officials could argue that any monetization of a player's status as an NFL athlete falls under their jurisdiction. But here's the problem with that argument. Nil rights have already been established as belonging to athletes in the college space. Players entering the NFL from college programs have spent years controlling their own brands. Telling them they must suddenly surrender those rights creates an awkward contradiction. Additionally, challenging Shedeur's arrangement publicly would generate massive negative attention. The league would appear to be attacking a player for simply wanting fair compensation from his own popularity. That's terrible optics in an era when athlete empowerment movements are gaining cultural momentum. So far, the NFL has remained publicly silent about the clause. No official statements, no formal challenges, no rule clarification announcements. But sources suggest extensive behind-the-scenes discussions about how to prevent this from becoming standard practice. The language Shedeur's team crafted was deliberately comprehensive. It doesn't just protect current revenue streams, it anticipates future monetization methods that may not even exist yet. Digital collectibles, virtual reality experiences, artificial intelligence applications using his likeness, all covered under his ownership umbrella. This forward-thinking approach reveals how carefully the contract was constructed. The Sanders family wasn't just solving today's problems. They were building infrastructure for tomorrow's opportunities. The ink was barely dry before the money started rolling in. And the numbers were absolutely staggering enough to make every front office in the league pay very close attention. Fifth-round draft picks typically earn base salaries under $1 million annually. Their signing bonuses amount to a few $100,000 at most. By NFL standards, these are modest sums that reflect the uncertain futures of late-round selections. Most will never start a game. Many won't survive their first training camp. Shedeur's base contract followed these expectations perfectly. His salary from the Cleveland Browns represents typical fifth-round compensation. Nothing special, nothing noteworthy, nothing that would raise eyebrows among league financial analysts. Then the brand revenue started accumulating. Reports indicate Shedeur generated approximately $14 million in personal brand income during his first year in the NFL. That figure doesn't include his playing salary. That's purely from merchandise, sponsorships, content monetization, and licensing arrangements flowing through his personal business structure. $14 million, from a rookie quarterback who hadn't started a single regular season game. To put this in perspective, many established NFL veterans with multiple Pro Bowl appearances earn less than this from all sources combined. Shedeur essentially quadrupled his effective compensation before ever proving himself at the professional level. The jersey sales alone produced remarkable numbers. When the Browns announced their roster, Shedeur's jersey immediately became one of the best-selling items in franchise history. The combination of Colorado's devoted fanbase transferring their loyalty, plus the Coach Prime phenomenon attracting casual observers, created unprecedented demand. Under normal circumstances, those sales would primarily benefit the Browns and the NFL's licensing apparatus. Shedeur would receive token acknowledgement through standard league revenue sharing, maybe a few $1,000s after accounting for all the institutional cuts. The Prime Equity Clause changed that math entirely. Every jersey sold triggered his 20% provision. Suddenly, that merchandise demand translated into direct, substantial income. Social media monetization added another significant revenue stream. Shedeur entered the NFL with millions of followers across platforms. His content regularly generated views in the hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions. Advertising revenue from those views flows directly to his accounts rather than through any league intermediary. The content itself became more valuable upon his NFL arrival. Brands eager to reach football audiences suddenly had access to an NFL player without needing league approval or paying league premiums. They could work directly with Shedeur, creating sponsored content that felt authentic rather than corporate. Energy drink companies came calling. Apparel brands wanted partnerships. Technology firms saw marketing opportunities. A streaming service reportedly signed a deal for original content featuring his journey from college star to professional prospect. None of these arrangements required Cleveland's permission or the NFL's blessing. They existed entirely within Shedeur's personal business framework, protected by his contract language. The $14 million figure reportedly represents conservative accounting. Some industry analysts believe actual revenue exceeded $20 million when including all income sources and pending payment structures. The precise numbers remain private, but the magnitude is clear regardless of exact figures. Compare this to what previous fifth-round quarterbacks earned in their rookie seasons. Most made their base salary and nothing more. A few lucky ones landed local car dealership commercials or regional sponsorship deals worth modest amounts. None approached anything close to eight-figure supplementary income. Shedeur's situation demonstrates something important about modern athlete economics. Playing ability still matters enormously for career longevity and team success, but marketability has become equally valuable for personal wealth accumulation. A player with average NFL skills but extraordinary brand reach can outturn superstars who focus solely on their sport. The Browns find themselves in a curious position. They benefit from Shedeur's popularity through increased ticket sales, merchandise interest, and media attention. But they're also watching their rookie quarterback build a financial empire that operates largely independent of their organization. Usually, teams control their players' earning potential. Your value depends on the opportunities they provide. Shedeur flipped that dynamic. His value exists regardless of Cleveland's plans for him. He brought his own platform, his own audience, his own revenue streams. When those numbers reached league headquarters, the reaction was immediate, and it definitely wasn't celebration. The first signs of institutional anxiety emerged within days of contract details becoming public. General managers started receiving calls from ownership groups demanding explanations. How did this happen? Why wasn't anyone paying attention? What does this mean for our team's negotiations? Within league offices, the response was less confusion and more controlled panic. Executives understood immediately what the Sanders Clause represented. This wasn't just one player getting creative with compensation. This was a direct challenge to revenue structures the NFL has protected for decades. Emergency meetings were reportedly convened involving legal counsel, marketing leadership, and labor relations specialists. The agenda focused on a single question: how do we prevent this from becoming standard practice? The problem facing league officials is multifaceted. They can't simply void Shedeur's contract without cause. The language was presumably reviewed before signing, making post-facto objections legally questionable. Publicly attacking the arrangement would create a media firestorm, portraying the NFL as opposing athlete empowerment. More importantly, the horse has already left the barn. Other players know what's possible now. Other agents are already studying the clause structure. The next draft class will enter negotiations armed with a proven template for brand ownership. Some executives reportedly pushed for immediate rule clarification that would prohibit future Sanders-style arrangements. But implementing such restrictions requires either modifying the collective bargaining agreement, which demands player union approval, or issuing interpretive guidance that could face legal challenges. The NFLPA has shown no interest in helping the league close this door. If anything, union representatives view Shedeur's success as leverage for future negotiations. Player associations have advocated for greater likeness control for years. Now they have a real-world example, proving such arrangements can work spectacularly well. Behind closed doors, the rhetoric from some owners has reportedly turned aggressive. They view the prime equity clause as a threat to competitive balance and league unity. If top prospects can negotiate brand ownership independently, teams lose control over a significant value proposition. Why would a marketable player choose a small market franchise if they can monetize their brand equally well anywhere? This concern reveals deeper anxieties about the NFL's future business model. The league has always depended on centralized control to maintain competitive balance and uniform fan experience. Individual player brands that rival team identities complicate that structure significantly. Consider what happens if 10 highly marketable rookies each demand Sanders-style clauses next year. Suddenly, the league's merchandise revenue becomes fragmented. Each player controls their own slice rather than contributing to a unified pool. Some players earn substantially more than others based on marketing appeal rather than playing ability. This scenario terrifies league accountants who have built financial projections, assuming continued centralized control. It excites player advocates who see it as long overdue correction of exploitative practices. The NFL's public communications have remained carefully neutral. No official statements condemning or endorsing the arrangement. No press releases clarifying policy positions. This silence itself speaks volumes about the league's uncertainty. When the NFL feels confident about its position, it communicates aggressively. Rule changes are announced proudly. Policy clarifications are distributed widely. Silence typically indicates internal disagreement about how to proceed. Sources suggest 3 factions have emerged within league leadership. One group wants immediate action to close perceived loopholes. Another believes accommodation is inevitable and the league should adapt proactively. A third faction advocates waiting to see how courts might interpret challenges before committing to any position. While executives debate strategy, the the practical effects continue accumulating. Every day that passes without league pushback strengthens the precedent. Every agent who successfully cites Shedeur's contract in negotiations makes future challenges more difficult. The irony is not lost on observers. The NFL built its empire by controlling player identities and monetizing them more effectively than athletes could individually. Now a player has demonstrated that individual monetization can exceed what the league provides. The model that made the NFL rich is being used against them. But while executives scrambled to contain the damage, something else was happening in locker rooms across the league. Players who'd accepted the old system their entire careers were suddenly asking uncomfortable questions. Veterans who have spent years in the league have started having conversations they've never had before. In training facilities, on team flights, during downtime between meetings, the topic keeps surfacing. Did you see what Shedeur did? Could we have done that? Why didn't anyone tell us this was possible? The answers to those questions are uncomfortable. Most players signed away their brand rights without understanding what they were surrendering. Their agents focused on salary and guarantees, not intellectual property provisions. The league certainly wasn't explaining the value players were leaving on the table. Now, established veterans are watching a rookie earn more from brand deals than they've accumulated in their entire careers. Some feel frustration. Others feel motivated. All of them recognize that the game has fundamentally changed. Several prominent players have reportedly reached out to Shedeur directly, seeking advice on how to restructure their own business arrangements. Can existing contracts be amended? Can brand ownership be negotiated during extension talks? What attorneys should they consult? Shedeur hasn't gatekept this information. By multiple accounts, he's been generous with guidance, explaining strategies his family developed over years of preparation. This knowledge sharing is creating a multiplier effect as players educate each other about possibilities they never previously considered. The agent community has experienced even more dramatic transformation. Representatives who previously focused exclusively on maximizing contract values are suddenly scrambling to understand intellectual property law, licensing structures, and brand monetization strategies. Those who adapt quickly will thrive in this new environment. Those who can't will lose clients to competitors offering more comprehensive representation. The definition of what constitutes elite player representation is expanding rapidly. Multiple agents have already informed their top prospects for upcoming drafts that Sanders-style clauses will be standard requests in negotiations. The terminology itself, Sanders precedent and prime equity clause, is becoming industry shorthand for brand ownership provisions. This creates interesting dynamics for teams preparing for future drafts. Previously, rookie negotiations were essentially formalities. Players signed slotted deals with minimal modifications. Now, front offices must prepare for substantive business discussions about rights and revenue sharing. Some teams will embrace this evolution. Forward-thinking organizations recognize that accommodating player brand interests can actually benefit franchises through increased attention and engagement. A rising tide lifting all boats. Other organizations will resist stubbornly. Teams with traditional ownership groups may view brand-conscious players as troublesome or difficult. This could affect which prospects certain franchises pursue, creating new dimensions in draft strategy. The college football pipeline is adapting fastest of all. Current NIL rules already allow college athletes to monetize their brands. Smart players are using their college years to build audiences and establish business structures that will transfer seamlessly to professional careers. Coaches and programs that help players develop these capabilities gain recruiting advantages. Those that focus exclusively on athletic development may find themselves losing prospects to competitors offering more comprehensive preparation. Shedeur's success validates what forward-thinking college athletes already suspected. The brand you build before going professional determines much of your financial ceiling afterward. Waiting until the NFL to start building means starting from scratch, while others capitalize on established audiences. This generation of athletes thinks differently about careers than their predecessors did. They've grown up watching influencers build fortunes from personal brands. They understand that audience equals opportunity. They're not content being employees when they could be entrepreneurs. The cultural shift extends beyond just financial considerations. Players increasingly want control over how their stories are told, how their images are used, how their legacies are shaped. Surrendering those rights to leagues feels like surrendering identity itself. Shedeur articulated this philosophy clearly in interviews, stating that if you don't own your name, you don't own your work. That mindset resonates deeply with athletes who have watched leagues profit from their efforts while controlling their narratives. The ripple effects from this single contract will take years to fully manifest, but the direction is unmistakably clear. Athletes are awakening to possibilities that previous generations never imagined. So what does all of this actually mean for the future of professional sports? This story transcends one quarterback and one contract. What Shedeur Sanders accomplished represents a fundamental shift in how athletes relate to the leagues they play in. The employee mentality that dominated professional sports for generations is giving way to an ownership mindset that will reshape the entire industry. The NFL will push back. Rules may change. Future negotiations will become more contentious. Some teams will refuse to accommodate brand ownership demands. But the precedent has been established. Players now know what's possible, and that knowledge cannot be unlearned. Other sports leagues are watching closely. Basketball, baseball, soccer, hockey, every major sport faces similar questions about athlete brand rights and revenue distribution. The answers developed in NFL boardrooms will influence policies worldwide. Shedeur may become a Hall of Fame quarterback, or he may have an unremarkable playing career. Either way, his impact on professional sports business is already secured. He demonstrated that athletes can own their value rather than merely renting it to institutions. The future belongs to players who understand their worth extends beyond their athletic contributions. The Sanders family proved that empowerment isn't given. It's taken by those prepared to claim it.